Richmond.
Yeah, okay. So we'll be recording this. The program tonight related to the Seashore Trolley Museum. I think Seashore and the 470 Club have generally had a good relationship over the years. John Mercurio, our speaker tonight, has been a longtime member of the 470 Club, and you see he's a volunteer down at Seashore. I think of the 12 trustees of the 470 Club, 3 of us, including myself, are also volunteers at Seashore Trolley Museum. John is education coordinator at the Trolley Museum, which I think is a key function of any history museum. I think that's a key function of a Seashore Trolley Museum, to educate the public, particularly maybe younger people, about history of transit and its importance. I'll let John just tell you more about what he's going to present. But John, why don't you go ahead and give us your presentation.
Okay, thank you, Richmond, and thanks, folks, for the invitation to be your speaker tonight. Just give me a minute or two so I can set up the slideshow. All right, folks. Actually, what I want to do is just go back and give you a little background in regards to the museum, and especially our founders. In 1939, there's a group of kids from Boston. They were in their early 20s. They loved to come to Maine and ride the interurbans of the streetcar companies. In that April trip, they found out the Biddeford and Saco was changing over to buses. The Biddeford and Saco was operating open cars at the time, and one of the few electric railways that was doing so. They went back to their buddies in Boston. They had talked a lot about preserving a streetcar, but nothing had ever come of it. All of a sudden now, there was a drop dead date. So they contacted Mr. Stride, the president and owner of the Biddeford and Saco, made arrangements to go to his house and plead their case. At first, he was charging them $300 to purchase the car. They negotiated with him. They made him realize that they wanted the car to preserve it for history. And let's keep in mind, it was one of his cars. Well, he realized what they were doing. He dropped the price down to $150. There was 10 in the group, so that meant $15 a piece, but 2 of the folks backed out. So the other 8 raised the $150. The next problem they had was they had to get the vehicle out of the city of Biddeford. Well, they found a piece of land a farmer had on Log Cabin Road in Kennebunkport. That piece of land was split by the former Atlantic shoreline right away and was of no use whatsoever to the farmer. He allowed them to drop the car there for $5 a year with the option to purchase it somewhere along the line. So here they were with a streetcar and a piece of land, bunch of kids. Within a year, they obtained a beautiful car, car 38, from Manchester, New Hampshire. And they were off and running, never realizing they would be the founders of the first and largest museum of mass transportation in the world. That's the Seashore Trolley Museum today. So in 1939, the only thing that was there for them was the abandoned right-of-way of the Atlantic shoreline. The Atlantic shoreline had built through the area in 1904 and built the line up to Biddeford from what was known as Townhouse Square, which is about 2 miles towards Dock Square. And is actually halfway basically between the museum and Dock Square, Kennebunkport. So that's what they were facing. They worked in any kind of weather. They came up every weekend. And the goal was to lay some length of track in order to protect the cars. From there, they built their own homemade generator. After that, finally, after a period of time, they actually built a very small shop that they could work on the cars under cover. So that was the beginning. As the time went along, in 1941, they actually incorporated as a nonprofit 501(c) corporation. With that done, they named in their charter that the organization was the New England Electric Railway Historical Society. So guess what came after that? That was in 1941. The war. And there were a bunch of young kids. Guess where they went? They went to war. They all survived. As soon as they were discharged, guess again, where did they go? Back to Kennebunkport. So they traveled from Boston area on weekends, as I said, and started their longtime project. As time went along, they started building barns. They built a larger shop, and they built the visitor center. They built the loop just prior to building the visitor center, and that was at the towards the entrance of the museum. At the same time, they started laying track, not only for the yards to the barn, but they had purchased and acquired over the years about 1.8 miles of the abandoned Atlantic shoreline right away. So again, they laid a section of track. Maybe it was 50 feet at one time, maybe it was 10 feet another, whatever. They kept building up and up a hill towards what would become Talbot Park. At Talbot Park, when they finally reached it, they constructed a loop so that there would be a turnaround for the cars to come back to the visitor center. In the meantime, they would give streetcar rides to the general public up the main line to whatever end of track there was, reverse the car, and come back to the visitor center. Well, the loop at Talbot Park was opened in October 1995. So get a load of this. From 1939, when they dropped the car off, Biddeford and Saco 31, it took to 1995 to construct their right-of-way. We're not only talking tracks here. This is an electric railway, folks. So we're talking about not only the tracks, culverts, and whatever, but also the poles, towers, and the electrical lines. So it's an amazing effort to think it was done by a bunch of kids. When we do tours, especially for the bus coach tours, we give them that background, and the people are just amazed when they see what is there today, which is a photo that we have on the first slide here. Let's go back to the Atlantic shoreline for a moment. When the Atlantic shoreline built in 1904, it was the line through our property up to the center of Biddeford, downtown Biddeford. Southbound, it went to Townhouse Square. Townhouse Square was a junction. At Townhouse Square, you could stay on the car and go to Dock Square at the extra 2 miles. You could get off the car and you could go to Cape Porpoise. Cape Porpoise was very important to the Atlantic shoreline because at Cape Porpoise, schooners would unload coal for the Goodall mills that were located in Springvale, Sanford area. And that was another line. At Townhouse Square, people could change over and go through Kennebunk. There was 2 routes. The first route was to go to Sanford and Springvale. The second route out of Townhouse and through Kennebunk was all the way down to Kittery. In Kittery, you could get onto an Atlantic shoreline ferry, cross the channel, and go to Portsmouth. They also had a branch out of Kittery that went to Dover, New Hampshire. So at one time, I believe, Richmond, they had the largest amount of trackage in the state of Maine. But that gives you an idea how important the railway was at the time, uniting all those communities along their rights of way. Well, they made it until 1927 on the Biddeford route. At that point, they abandoned it. And when they did, they took up all the rail, all the ties, took down all the poles, all the wire to use at other locations. So when the kids came, the only thing that was there was that abandoned right away. They were able to make swaps with the predecessor to the Maine Central Power Company and Maine Central Power itself on land swaps and so forth, and wound up, they acquired the land all the way up to Biddeford Center. But they knew it was impractical for them to actually go into the town, and because the town was building the airport at the time. So what they did is they acquired land with a left-hand turn at their end of line that went to Route 1. At Route 1, they established a sub operation. Now this is the Seashore Trolley Museum I'm talking about. Sorry for that confusion. So they were at Route 1 for a good deal of time. They got the people driving by, which was a great advantage to them, whereas the museum today is off of Log Cabin Road, 1.5 miles from Route 1. But then came the problems. If there was any major mechanical problems with the streetcars they brought up there, they would have to put them on a flatbed trailer and bring them back to the shop in Kennebunkport. So they finally gave up that operation and they concentrated on the main campus. Okay. So here's some of our barns. This is the main line. This is our shop. This is the old shop. These are two of the barns that we have. The third barn. This is a Riverside barn. And again, this is the main line. So this is a presentation that we make to social clubs, community clubs, libraries, and other organizations. So basically, this set of slides is our marketing slides. So come and visit us in 2023. Ride by rail through the countryside on one of our restored 1900 electric streetcars. Learn how streetcars moved the people who built our major cities, how they helped develop the suburbs surrounding them. Experience the power of the electric motors as you restore your restored antique trolley pulls away from the visitor center platform for a trip to Talbot Park. I have the share screen bar overshadowing the wording here. So anyway, witness a bygone era in American transportation history. Right to yesteryear, as you travel by rail over parts of the old Atlantic shoreline, interurban line that once connected Kittery, Kennebunkport, Biddeford, and Sanford. Enjoy your history to the Seashore Trolley Museum in a day. Take a memorable step back into the history of transit. A visit to our museum offers new experiences for the young, nostalgia for adults, as well as a lesson for the future and fun for all. Hear your motorman sound the trolley whistle as your car approaches Meserve's crossing, at one time a farm cattle crossing on the Atlantic shoreline. Ride one of our historic turn-of-the-century open trolley cars on a warm summer's day. This is natural air conditioning at its very best. It's car 303 from New Haven, Connecticut. Learn about the trolley era in the museum's exhibit room and how people traveled before the automobile became king. Visit our townhouse restoration shop where the magic happens. See staff and volunteers restoring 19 and early 20th century trolleys and other transit vehicles for future generations to enjoy. Visit the car houses where you'll find on display many trolleys from different eras that have been carefully restored in our shop. And coming to you brand new, see our newest car house, the South Boston .20. To the left of this brand new barn, which has basically been completed this week. To the left of this barn was the original South Boston barn. It was an enclosed barn except for the front. There was no doors. So the streetcars inside were exposed to the elements. There was 3 tracks and the 2 cars to each track. So the capacity of the car house was the 6 cars. The new barn, there's 3 tracks, 3 cars deep. So we will be able to put 9 cars in there. It also has a pit in the center track, which will be used to do minor running repairs to the cars. We expect visitors to be allowed to go in there. Of course, the pit will be covered. And the fleet cars, the anticipation is that the fleet cars that we use on a daily basis will be stored in this car barn. Also, great news for the museum. In the fall, a model railroad known as the Main Central will be housed at a brand new building near our parking lot. This is a class 1 operation. The model railroad itself was housed in a museum in Jonesport. The owner of the model railroad passed away. His wife succeeded him, keeping the museum open with the help of friends and relatives. But in the last couple of years, it became too much for her. They searched for a place that would accept their model railroad. And they found the Seashore Trolley Museum. So it's a wonderful arrangement. They are actually paying for the construction of the building. And a 10-year contract has been signed that they will man and support the building, the model railroad, for 10 years. So this is exciting. We have an awful lot of ideas and plans for the public. Be a motorman and show your family or friends you can run a trolley. Ask at the ticket window about our Be a Motorman program. It's very popular. We have people that come just for the day and all of a sudden find out about the Be a Motorman, and they immediately sign up. Visit our car houses to learn about the many different cars, electric cars, street cars, interurban cars, and work cars. Plus, visit our bus collection, extensive bus collection, and there's a lot happening with that collection. Land has been cleared near the entrance to the museum, and buses will be moved from where they're stored now near one of the barns to a new location. Attend special events such as Memorial Day, Mother's Day, Father's Day, Transit Day, Pumpkin Patch, Veterans Day, Christmas Prelude, to name a few. And we have some very popular events that have taken place in the recent past and will again this summer. For children and families, Daniel the Tiger and the Big Red Dog. Very, very popular, and they have been pleasantly supplying a lot of income to the museum. Ice cream night. Looking for something to do on a summer's night? At 5:30 p.m. every Wednesday in July and August. We're running multiple trips. Right now, the plan is for 3 trips up to Talbot Park. Upon returning, everybody gets ice cream. A wonderful family event. Then our big one that's been around for over 20 years, Pumpkin Patch Weekends. Annual fall tradition. On a 3-day weekend, we can get over 2,000 people. It's so popular that we have to sell reserved tickets. And then comes Christmas Prelude in the Kennebucks. Home and Gardens about 4 or 5 years ago listed the Christmas Prelude in Kennebunkport is one of the top things in the country for a small locale. And a few years ago, a major impact on our museum. We acquired a brand new mobile lift. And especially with the bus tours, folks, primarily these tours from all around the country on these nice motor coaches, they're basically retired people. And of course, a lot of them have mobility problems. So this lift has been a boon to our visitors and to the museum. Of course, we have a museum store. And how about volunteering at the museum? Well, available for our volunteers is obviously trolley operations, operators and conductors. That's where I initially started with the museum in 1995. There's museum docents, which are tour guides, very important. The restoration shop craftsmen and volunteer helpers. We have openings in the track and overhead construction and maintenance departments, as well as railway signal maintenance and the museum store. So the memberships of the museum, we have individual memberships, family memberships, and corporate memberships. Obviously, they all have advantages to be a member. You get Dispatch magazine, you get communications of what's going on at the museum. But the family membership is really a boon to the families, because with that membership, people families can come to the museum. There's not an admission charge, and they get a discount in the museum store. So basically, that's an outline. Here's South Boston 2 that was torn down. And over here is where the new building is now located. These tracks obviously had to be taken up. The yard tracks, they They're preparing this week to start relaying them, and they will come into this direction to the barn. So, Richmond, at this point, let's unmute everybody to answer any questions that they might have in regards to the museum itself. And then we're going to go into a slide show about the history of mass transportation.
Yeah, John, I don't think I can unmute everybody. If somebody has a question, you'll need to unmute yourself.
Ever since they built the new car barn for the trolley line, was it that the old one was starting to look dilapidated?
The answer to that is yes. There was, the time had come. It had served its purpose. It was the first barn, so it did serve a purpose. But there was a slight lean occurring to the port side, the left side, and it was only going to get worse instead of better. It was all dirt floor in that particular barn. The other disadvantage that I already mentioned was the fact that there was no doors to it. So you're right, it was getting in pretty poor shape.
Even when the old barn didn't have doors, we were worried about vandalisms or shoplifting
Yeah.
sneaking in there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's obviously one of the great things about the new barn. And there's security cameras in the area as well. Next.
I'm Kevin Twine from Bowden.
Yes, Kevin.
20 years ago, I worked in the city of Newark, New Jersey, and they had a full fleet of trolley cars. Probably had about a 15, 20-mile system there going from one end of the city to the other. These were beautiful cars. They're wood, polished wood and brass. And they ended up getting rid of all of them because they rebuilt the whole system and they got new cars. Did you end up with any of those cars by any chance?
Again, what city?
Newark, New Jersey. They were
Yes.
beautiful.
Yeah. We have a PCC car from Newark, and I believe we, Richmond, do we have another car from New Jersey?
Well, there was one that had served in Atlantic City for a while. Well, and then, well, there's some rapid transit. The cars that worked on the rapid transit line between Philadelphia and on the New Jersey side. But yeah, I think the one that Kevin was talking about would be one of those PCC cars. But, yep, so we've got one of them. I don't believe it's on public display currently, but yeah, it is in the collection.
What's a PCC car?
It's the one of the most successful streetcars ever built. Yeah, by the mid 1930s, not only were the steam railroads in decline, but so were the streetcars. The steam railroads addressed the problem, Kevin, by buying streamlined passenger cars. Instead of wood sides, they were metal sides. They even put shrouding over their steam locomotives to cover all the domes and paraphernalia on the top of the boiler. Well, the presidents of the streetcar companies got together and they figured out if the steam railroads could lure people back to ride their trains by streamlining. Why couldn't the streetcar companies do the same? And they designed and had built the President's Conference Committee car, short, the PCC. There was over 1,000 of them built across the country. They were highly, highly successful. And there are still cities around the country, a few cities that are still operating on a heritage railway basis on their regular routes, these PCCs. The Boston Mattapan Ashmont line had been running them since they were built and rebuilt. And they, about 4 or 5 years ago, started talking about getting rid of them and bringing in buses, and the general public went through the roof. So I believe they're rehabbing them now.
Yeah.
Any other question?
Thank you for the explanation. That was a very good explanation.
Thank you, Kevin. Okay, if there's none, let's see if we can change gears here a little bit. Seashore Trolley Museum, preserving the history of mass transportation. And we're talking about not only vehicles, but just as important, if not more so, we're talking about the people that built this industry and changed the way we live. So a little bit of background. In the 1800s, the early 1800s, everything was the neighborhood. Everybody lived in the neighborhood. They shopped in the neighborhood. They went to school in the neighborhood. They worked in the neighborhood. Everything was within the neighborhood. And how did they get around? They walked. Very few people in the city had the wealth to have a horse and carriage. And if you have a horse and carriage, what do you need? A carriage house, a barn. Again, very few people had that wealth. So everybody walked. Your first public transportation was known as the omnibus. In 1827, in the Paris, France area, a gentleman came up with the idea. He had a carriage. Why couldn't he charge people to take them from one place to another using his vehicle? And that was the start. One person, one idea. He named it the omnibus. So the omnibus, a lot of them were similar to a stagecoach that we know of out west, but others were a little bit more defined than that, more rectangular. This particular one, it goes back to Broadway in New York City, which I was very fortunate to find this image because of the fact that in 1929, the operation, similar operation started in Manhattan, down in the Bowery. Notice it's still a vehicle with wood wheels with iron cap to it. And imagine running on cobblestone or pavers. It must have been a heck of a ride. They did have some kind of a suspension system. Now, this is pretty unusual for this vehicle because it shows one horse. So this obviously was on level ground because it took usually more than one horse. In this case, we have a similar vehicle. There's your iron cladding there with 2 horses. Now, of course, there was no motorman, so I guess you could call him a driver. But this driver was handling a team of horses. Guess what? Professional drivers to this day are known as what? Teamsters. This is not a conductor. It's a fare collector. Now here's another omnibus, 2 horses. Again, probably pretty level ground. The thing I like about this one is that right from the get-go, we think the advertising in the vehicles today, whether they're buses or light rail vehicles or whatever, and the ones that we see in the older streetcars was something. Well, it goes way back to the start of the transportation. Now, here's another example where they needed a team of 4 horses, the vehicle being heavier. They had the upper deck there for additional passengers. And there's your advertising. And they ran in the winter too. And then came the first great leap. This is from the Washington Anacostia Street Railway, which is Washington, D.C. The thing about this, the car looks a little bit larger, although there's no second story. But look at this, a team of 2 horses. And that was standard. Why? Because they realized that the streetcar companies realized that the steam railroads could have a train, a freight train, with 12, 14, 15 cars, and a passenger train with 4, 5, 6 cars. How could they pull that weight? Well, they realized that it was because of steel railroad wheels with flanges on steel rail. It cut down the friction dramatically. Well, if the steam railroads could do that, why couldn't the streetcar companies? So that's exactly what they did. They took a regular streetcar or omnibus and put it on railroad wheels and ran it on track. So the advantage was the larger car. And when you have, if you want to make money with a streetcar company, you do it by more people riding. So that was an advantage. A larger car, more people, more income. Of course, it made a much better ride for the general public. So here's another one, a larger one, 2 horses. There's your wheel assembly, it's called a single truck. Now the thing about this particular car and the ones that ran on rail, they had a disadvantage. Yes, they could make more money, but the disadvantage is the car could only go where the track went. Whereas the omnibus with regular wheels, it could go anywhere. Well, it was the people. So you had your streetcar company and at first the omnibus. And you had your owners, you had your stockholders, you had your general manager, and other officers. it took people. They needed employees to be out on the streets, especially obviously in the hot weather, to care for the animals, to give them feed, but more importantly, to give them water. And I would assume that they did a lot of pickup after the horses. You needed folks who were blacksmiths. You needed groomers to keep the horses healthy. You had the stall keepers that had to maintain the hay and clean the stalls. You remove the waste. You needed veterinarians to keep the horses healthy or to take care of them when they became ill. You needed harness makers. So here's the impact, folks. By the mid 1880s, now we're talking about the horse-drawn era, there was 415 companies. There was 6,000 miles that were operated. They transported 188 million people. In 1923, Pittsburgh terminated their horse-drawn lines, and it was the last one. But wait, in 1927, Sulphur Rock, Arkansas, was the actual last operated animal line. It was mule drawer. What was the next generation? It was the cable car. Andrew Smith Halliday in San Francisco. He devised a rope system to lower ore cars into mine and then winch them back out. He was in downtown San Francisco one day when he saw a horrific accident. There was a car going up, a horse-drawn car going up a hill, and the brakes failed on the car. The car started tumbling down the hill, dragging the horses to their death, and many, many people were injured. He was so aghast that he went back home and studied and thought and studied and tried this, that, and the other thing. And he realized the rope system could be a cable system. Instead of having the horses draw the car, a cable would pull the car, move the car. But no way could rope handle the weight of a car. So what did he do? He devised a wire cable system. And they built a trough between the rails on the street. And with that trough, let's take a look at it here. You had your two rails and then the trough in the middle. That is where the cable is. You had to have a powerhouse. The powerhouse was run by steam to generate the power to move the car. And it would consist of a pulley system. The pulleys in the building, the main ones to do the drive, and then pulleys out in the street. They would be either horizontal to go around corners, or they were vertical to go over a hill. There was no motor, it was the cable. So there was no motorman. There was no teamster. The operator was known as a gripper. He had two grips. One was a brake and the other one was to engage the cable. When they wanted to move the car, they released the brake and at the same time grab the gripper. To put it simply, the gripper had long mechanical equipment with kind of a claw device at the bottom. And that claw device would grab a hold of the cable and the cable would move the car. It made, well, let's put it this way. Can you imagine the impact that made on the streetcar industry? At one point, I believe it was the Boston West End Streetcar Company had 8,000 horses to maintain their system. All that was on the way out in a lot of cities. So it was powered by steam through coal. But then as electricity came in the mid 1880s, everything was converted over to operating the pulley system with electricity. This is actually the power building of the Muni system in San Francisco. Well, was San Francisco the only operator? Well, as I mentioned, not really. Here's a shot in Seattle, and there's your trough right here. Okay, so here's the question for you. If I say San Francisco, what do you think of? You're supposed to say cable cars. If I say cable cars, what city do you think of? San Francisco. So who had the largest cable system in the country? Anybody? No takers? Chicago, Illinois had the largest system. Well, the next leap forward was, of course, electricity. In the 1890s, the very popular open cars. This picture was taken a sponsored outing to go to one of the trolley parks. 1900s, the cars got bigger, more powerful. Then in the teens, more and more extensive use of electricity. Look at this. This streetcar company did double poles. Instead of using one of the rails as a ground, they strung two wires. Not the most common way of the day to run streetcar companies. In the 1920s, where you got more used to, again, larger cars. And notice the device here. That's not a cow catcher. There's no cows over here. That is called a fender. And basically it was a people catcher. There's always somebody that was in a rush would run in front of a streetcar, trip and fall and go under the wheels, or especially in the wintertime. Then in the 1930s, Kevin, this is your PCCs. This is on the Green Line in Boston, up to Boston College Statement University.
Yeah, they look just like the ones in Newark.
Yeah,
Same type.
and that's the streamlining. Washington, D.C., we have a PC from Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. was a cable system. Well, not really, but what they did is they built a trough between the rails And instead of a cable in the trough, they put an electrical line, the pickup. And at the bottom of the trucks of the PCCs, they have an electrical contact device that runs along that electrical line. That's why if you go to Washington, D.C., there's no poles, no suspension, no wires in the sky. In the 1940s, the industry, like everybody else, went to war. So the industry's impact on America. Well, the omnibus transformed the walking public into a transported one, expanded life to beyond the neighborhood, employed hundreds of thousands of people, and established mass transportation. The cable car came, greatly reduced the cost of mass transportation by reducing the dependency on horse-drawn transportation. There was more efficiency in the cities with the hills, and the technology adopted by major cities. Electricity. Electric motors allowed cars to be larger and faster. The systems expanded to cemeteries, helped create the trolley parks by bringing people from Center City out into the countryside. Eventually, they built homes out there and created suburbia. And of course, the interurbans, which united the outlying areas. New Orleans car, and here's your cemetery. They provided recreation. Here's a touring car from British Columbia. Cincinnati had them. The two museums, the museum and one of the museums in Connecticut has one. The Seashore Trolley Museum has one, and there's two in Montreal. There were only 4 of the cars built out of Montreal, and they all have survived. And here's the impact they had on society for not only recreation to bring people out into the trolley parks and provide them swimming, musical entertainment, because they were electric streetcars. There was restaurants, there was boating, canoeing, and the like. So that helped level out the streetcar companies' income on weekends, because prior to the parks, their income started to fall on Saturday and drops substantially on Sunday, the non-work days. Cape Porpoise. How do you make more money, folks? You build a casino? Gambling? No way. A casino back in those days were a dinner dance hall. You bring your sweetheart out, have a beautiful shore dinner, and then dance the night away. So right now, the fishing pier is on this side of the bay. Eventually, they tore down the casino when the Atlantic shoreline was having financial trouble. This is the Fells Way in Medford, the line that goes to Stoneham from Sullivan Square. Now let's not forget about the interurbans. The steam railroads, they wanted to stop at the major cities and major towns. It took a mile to start a train, the speed, a mile to slow it down to a stop. So it really wasn't practical to stop at all the villages here, there, and everywhere. So the streetcar companies took over with the interurbans. This line out to Yarmouth from Portland. This is downtown Portland. I believe it's Congress Square. And this is a car from the Portland Lewiston interurban that did go up to Lewiston. We have there was only, I believe, 4 of these cars built. Five built, something like that. Well, in any event, our volunteers at one point found the sister to these cars. It's called a Narcissus. It's in the shop now, currently being restored. This is well over a $1 million project. It was found on a lot of land here in Maine, and it was being used as a summer home, a camp. So a lot of the interior was all altered. This is a picture of the Atlantic shoreline in Sanford, Maine. This is their headquarters in Sanford. And this is where it all started, out of the good old mills in Sanford. The Atlantic shoreline was not only a passenger carrier, but it was a freight carrier. I mentioned picking up coal in Cape Porpoise and transporting it to the mills, but it also brought raw materials to the mills and the finished product to the nearest railhead, which was the Boston in Maine. So here's the facts. 1893 mileage operated, 5,783. In 1895, 910 companies operated 11,000 miles of track. In 1907, operating the mileage was 34,000. Let's see if I have this right. Yeah, I'm having a problem with these figures. So bear with me, please. 1923, considered one of the heydays of the industry. $15.7 billion people carried. The revenue was $1 billion. That was 1923 dollars, folks, not our dollars. It was the third largest employer in the country. Who made the impact? It was the people. It was crews. It was operators. It was the conductor. It was the people in the dispatching office. It was the maintenance people. It was the coin collectors and auditors. It was the training staff. It was the dispatcher. It was the overhead people. The track maintenance. By the way, this is Minneapolis, St. Paul, Twin Cities line. We have a car in our collection. It was hired help during the winter time. It was the stockholders, managers, presidents, and of course it was the people. Changing times. Here came the bus. Then have you heard about the conspiracy? Standard Oil, Firestone, and General Motors came together and they formed the National City Lines bus line to put the streetcar companies out of business. But the reality of it all, folks, the mass-produced automobile put the streetcars out of business. The buses were more flexible, and city congestion. This really put them out of business. So the buses took over, not only urban, but interurban. A lot of lines use trackless trolley to take advantage of the overhead and the mobility somewhat. Your intercity. So what happened to the streetcars? That's what happened to them. The next view of these people, of these cars rather, would have been torched. People used them, purchased them for private residence. Landlords purchased them to make apartment houses. This particular unit here was a US Post Office. So here was the last streetcar that operated in Detroit. But I say not really. Why? Light rail vehicles. So I don't care what you call them, but to me, that's a trolley. It's just a fancy one. Thank you, folks, for attending tonight. Thank you for your patience. I know this was a long presentation, but I felt that to have an overall view of Seashore Trolley Museum, we should have an overview of the Atlantic shoreline and the people that actually made the industry. And this is what we are preserving at the Seashore Trolley Museum. Thank you so much.
Okay, John, thanks a lot for that. I think we already had one question in the chat. Maybe you saw that.
No.
Dave Sharp asked if Seashore had any cars from Toronto. Do you want to answer that?
Yeah, we do. We do have a Toronto car, and I believe it was in a shop the last several years. I can't remember if it's still in the shop. I believe it is. An awful lot of work has been done on it, and for Members Day a couple of years ago, we actually took it out of the shop to just run it very briefly, but it was found that there's electrical problems with the car. We have a lot of Canadian cars in our collection.
Yeah, I might just add to that. Yeah, I think Seashore has the largest collection of Canadian transit vehicles outside of Canada. Yeah, and then there's another light rail vehicle from Toronto that Seashore has been making arrangements to get. It hasn't come to the museum yet. Toronto has a different track gauge. It's a few inches wider than standard gauge, and there's been a hassle trying to re-gauge it, but so hoping to get another Toronto car at some point.
Any other questions?
John, I have a question
Yes,
for you.
Roger. Go ahead, Roger. You're muted. Roger's muted.
John, we're in Maine where there are interurban lines beside the one you talked about.
Oh, they were everywhere.
I mean,
They were up in they were in Bangor, they were north of Bangor. They were up in Madawaska. The thing was, and it goes back to the fact that they helped create the suburbs. A lot of the villagers might be a distance from the downtown area. So when the streetcar went out into the farmland, so to speak, it became an interurban. So there was the Portland, Lewiston, there was the Atlantic Shoreline. There was a great many of them. And that is a good question because it makes me think that you can go to the Seashore website and there's all sorts of links that will take you to the history of the area. And in fact, there was dozens and dozens, and I believe they're listed. Phil Morse has done a tremendous amount of work with a blog and the Seashore links.
Some of the routes of the Lewiston, Auburn, and Waterville could be considered long enough to be interurbans. And the other one in Maine that I immediately know of is the Aroostook Valley,
Yes,
and quite a few miles between Caribou and Presque Isle.
that's right. I was trying to think of the name of that one. Thank you.
I have a 1905 map showing all the trolley lines from between Washington and Bangor in northern Maine. And theoretically, you can get on in the northern end of Maine and you can take a trolley all the way to Washington. Theoretically, I mean, nobody would really do something like that because you had to get on the train to really do that. But
Well,
it's very interesting.
yeah.
Web of trolley lines everywhere.
Yeah, there would have been, it must have, anybody to do it must have been anticipating spending months away from home and having a wheelbarrow full of nickels.
Yeah, theoretically, they said you could go by streetcar from outside of Waterville, Maine to Wisconsin with only a short break around Little Falls, New York, or maybe 5 miles or so where you had to take a steam train.
Mm.
you might be interested. This week, Atlanta agreed to extend the trolley line considerably, and it will now go out into the suburbs. And they're going to build it in the next couple years here. There's tens of millions of dollars involved.
That is such a good point, Roger. A lot of the cities gave it up. They gave up electricity to move people around. And the ones that kept it, look at what their transportation systems are. But the other point you're making, I was out in Kansas City about 6 years ago. I was downtown and I realized they were building a trolley system, a light rail system. And a 2-mile loop uniting their arts district with their sports venue, financial district, and the restaurants. They sold it to the general public that in the first year, they would have 1 million riders. Okay, guess what happened? They had 2 million. Today, they're expanding their routes out to where the universities are. But here's the problem. 6 years ago, it cost $1.2 billion to build a line, a 2-mile loop.
Hmm.
So there you are, Roger.
Mhm. Is there any other questions for John? Well, I guess if not, we'll thank John again for a comprehensive presentation. And we'll hope to see everybody again next month. So,
Good
so
night.
Good night.
I must say, I
John,
am very impressed with this presentation. Thank you, John.
Well, thank you so much. That's very kind of you.
Mhm.
I'll surely
right.
come back this summer to see how things are holding up for the Trolley Museum.
Okay. Look
Yeah,
me
that was a
up. I
very
just-
good presentation. Thank you very much.
yeah, thank you, John. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm a dispatcher on Thursday, and I'm usually on crew on Saturday. So pick your day, and I'll make sure you get a #1 tour.
Okay. Good night.